Hello, this is just a quick video to give you some brief information regarding exam and essay technique in a timed AS level ethics Part A essay answer. A bit of information first in the bottom right hand corner here. We know that for a 35 mark question, Part A as shown here, and a 10 mark Part B answer, you will have roughly about 45 minutes. Now I would say that gives you 30 minutes or so for the 25 mark question. Now it's absolutely essential, I think, that you plan in some way your answer before writing it, because it gives you a greater structure, greater coherence, and ultimately will result in higher marks. So I'd say you should build in 5 minutes or so of planning into that time, which gives you roughly a mark a minute as a guide. What should you do first then? Well, you're going to have done lots of revision, and you're going to be turning over your exam paper. The first thing you're going to be confronted with is the Part A question, and so my suggestion is to actually try and firstly understand what the question is asking you to do. Here in this example, how might utilitarianism be applied to euthanasia? Discuss. We'd look at it and go, okay, well, it's asking us how utilitarianism is applied to euthanasia. So, we know that we need to know something about utilitarianism. We will need to know something about euthanasia. But, most importantly, we need to know how the two are related. In this case, how utilitarianism applies to euthanasia. So if you give lots of information about utilitarianism and lots of clear information about euthanasia but don't apply them, you haven't answered the question. Here is the key word. There is our point of focus, and we actually now know what the question is asking us. That takes about 30 seconds. Down the left-hand side here, I've given an example of what you might like to do in your 5 minutes. Now, initially, you're going to have lots of key words floating about in your head that are triggered and connected to the question. And so you might like to jot them down in a very, very quick keyword brainstorm format that should take you about 2 minutes. An example might be, okay, utilitarianism. Who was a utilitarian? Mill. Well, he came up with rule, and one of his key principles was that of liberty. You might like to do the same about Jeremy Bentham, greatest happiness for the greatest number, Francis Hutcheson, Gertrude Himmelfarb, and so on. And you also might like to do something quickly about euthanasia. Well, what types are there? There are passive, there's active, involuntary, voluntary, and so on. And you've got then this brainstorm of keywords. Now, whilst you're doing this, inevitably you'll be thinking about the structure of your essay. And it's really important that you have an idea of what the structure is. The way I'd suggest to think about it is that you need to have a brief introduction and a brief summary. The summary just says what you've done in a more concise format. This essay, I've looked at this, this, and this, and have concluded that this. Just to remind the examiner exactly what you've said. An introduction says what you're going to do. In this essay, I'm going to explore how the various forms of utilitarianism apply to the different types of euthanasia. So that would be how you'd introduce. You then might like to say what the definition of the main maxim of utilitarianism is. So utilitarianism is founded on the principle of the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. And then you might like to go into the subdivisions and categories of utilitarianism. I would do something like this. Paragraph 1 will be act, for example, and within that I'll look at examples, specific examples of passive and of active. Paragraph 2 can be preference utilitarianism with Peter Singer, and I'm looking at this example and this example of voluntary and involuntary. And that's the sort of structure that you might like to have, and it won't take you long, 2 or 3 minutes, just to get an idea, using keywords only, of how to structure your answer. So this will apply to this in this way. And that will allow you to then write consistently for 25 minutes and continuously, because you've got an idea of what's coming next. And so that allows you then with confidence to go straight into 25 minutes of writing your answer, knowing that you're talking about act, preference, rule, Mill, Bentham, and all of the key things that you should be talking about. In essence, 5 minutes at the beginning of a 30-minute timed essay for 25 marks, or 45 minutes if you're doing the 10 marker as well, will give you greater structure, coherence, and ultimately higher marks. Thank you.